Hello. So I did my presentation on abolishing performance appraisals. I did it on the second chapter of Tom Cohen's and Mary Jenkins' book, which was titled Abolishing, the Real Goal, Improving the Performance of an Organization. This presentation is by Jessica Chandler. Author Tom Cohen's was a labor lawyer as well as an expert in human resources and has over 30 years of experience in the field. Pictured to your right is the title cover of the book that he and Jenkins co-authored. Mary Jenkins was a consultant in the field, and she is pictured to your right. The real goal, improving performance. Performance appraisals are a prominent tool used in the workforce to evaluate how employees are doing. However, these appraisals have been used for decades, and there is little evidence to support that they even work. The authors start out by comparing performance appraisals to a horse and buggy, and that's something that needs to be left in the 19th century. Management by objective was a very common way of management in the human resource field as well as in any company, which we'll call for short the MBO, which is based on the idea of giving employees numerical targets that match overriding objectives. It was thought to be objective and fair since it was based on a numerical scale. However, it failed to motivate employees and managers and became less popular in the 1980s. However, performance appraisals prevailed and they switched back to being based on behavior. So, for example, a car salesman's boss telling him he needs to sell 30 cars this month. That was his numerical objective and his target that he was told he needed to meet. Even if he only needed to be selling 24 cars that month for the business to be successful, they would set their goal higher than it needed to be. So then performance appraisals switch back to being based on behavior, which is more of the attitude of the person, their people skills, and if they are allowed to work on time, the amount of work they've been putting in, and not so much on a numerical target, which thought to be a little bit less objective and fair. This led to workplace frustration. Frustration in the workplace has led to new ways of thinking about almost all aspects of the workplace. This means that people are trying to get rid of the management by objective approach and are trying to think of new ideas. This is leading to some stumbling in the work field because companies are not quite sure how to manage employees, and most companies know ways that don't work, but they're not really sure about the ways that do. There is still little evidence to support that any new way of thinking is working, and there is a big disconnect between managers and employees, as well as an overall individualized feeling in the workplace. And appraisals lead to this workplace negativity. Employees feel like their managers are just telling them to do something and not really thinking about what the employees want and just what the manager thinks would look good on them. One of the new models of thinking is a more organic model. Managers are moving away from the mechanical model and more towards what is called a systems theory model. The new model allows for more freedoms for employees as it does not control employees. It relies on trust between managers and employees. So instead of a manager telling an employee they have to sell 30 cars, they might just not say anything and just encourage them to keep selling and see what the employee can come up with on their own. This encouraged employees to set their own goal and hold themselves accountable for their actions. But why appraisals don't work, most people don't understand. Tom Cohen's and Mary Jenkins go into a deep discussion about this in the book, which I highly encourage you read. But the overall synopsis is that appraisals send the wrong message and cause damaging effects. By trying to tell an employee you want them to be independent but saying they have to sell 30 cars, you don't really give an employee a lot of moving room, which leads to a one-size-fits-all approach. And telling people what to do, and it's not relying on people's own motivation to see what they can do. So instead of telling an employee that you need to sell 24 cars, that employee, instead of just selling 24 cars, could sell 30 cars without you setting that goal for them. But by you saying they only have to sell 24, they only will sell 24. It also does not allow for diversity in the workplace. This leads to clashing values. So the new way of thinking is more of an emergent thinking, which is more about empowering people in the workplace, collaborative teams, unleashing intrinsic motivation, respecting diversity, emerging structures, just in time, improve process, and improve the whole system. Appraisals focus on a forced process, individual accountability, motivating with incentives, one size fits all, controlling structures, annual event approach, rely on inspection slash MBO, and it focuses more on improving the parts and not the machine as a whole. As you can see, these two types of thinking are very different, and appraisals don't really allow for diversity in the workplace since they are more one size fits all. And it motivates employees by offering incentives instead of letting employees motivate themselves. So, by giving an employee the freedom to do what they want with a program, they will feel more motivated to do something creative, and they might go above and beyond even your expectations of them instead of just telling them, I want you to plan this program with these events and have this thing going on at this time. And then you just tell them what to do, and it doesn't allow for any workplace creativity. Some common assumptions about improvements is that improving individual performance improves organizational performance. This is an old way of thinking as it is very individualized, and improving one person does not improve the company. The company as a whole has to come together and work on improving themselves, which is the new way of thinking. Improve the system, then the individual. All the parts are interconnected and rely on one another. This means that no one person is held accountable for the entire team's actions, and the entire team is held accountable. In conclusion, appraisals have become commonplace in the workplace and focus on individual improvement. Systems management came about recently and focuses on the system as a whole and works towards a more interconnected team. Obviously, this topic is very applicable to HR because HR can train their managers in their company to have a new way of thinking and work more towards systems management and interconnectedness instead of the individual approach that most companies have been using in the past. It also encourages HR to allow for change and step out of an old way of thinking that might not necessarily be working and step into a new way of thinking. And I guess the one thought that I was left with after reading this chapter is, since performance appraisals have caused so many problems and they do lead to a lot of negativity. I mean, no one likes being called into a room and told everything they're doing wrong and what they can do better. And just telling an employee, oh, you have to sell cars, and allowing them to get more creative with it and sell their own number of cars that they think is better, and having them set their own personal goals allows them to feel more empowered and feel like they're actually making a change in the workplace, which is why I'm surprised that so many companies are holding on to performance appraisals. I know a lot of companies still offer incentives, and I know that's only a part of using performance appraisals, but incentives are very common in the workforce. And I guess if people are actually motivating their employees, they should not have to incentivize employees. So why do employers still feel the need to incentivize employees instead of just managing them properly? And here are my references.